Hello, everyone. On today's episode, we're joined by Corey Brown, an electrician working at the Cushing Tank Farms in Oklahoma. I had the chance to visit the tank farms a couple months ago, and standing there surrounded by hundreds of massive oil tanks, you can feel the sheer scale and dominance of American energy firsthand. Corey does the hands on electrical work tied to the pipelines and infrastructure, and in this episode, we cover what the work looks like day to day, how commodity traders use Cushing as a benchmark for WTI pricing, tank cleaning operations, safety culture, and building a career in oil and gas. Hit subscribe and join us in supporting independent energy. All right, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Local Energy Podcast. My name is Peter Brecht. I am joined today by Corey Brown, who works out at the Cushing oil tanks. I just remember going out there a couple months ago and meeting Corey and his wife Carly, and we went to dinner at was it Godofredo's? Is that where it was?
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Hey, do you want to go see the tank farms?" And I'm like, "Of course!" Like I got to go do that. So, anyways, we started driving, following you down like dirt roads, and man, these tanks go for miles. It's insane. If you pull up Cushing on a map, you'll just see, I think it's Highway 33 goes through there, and then you've got just this smattering of like white tanks on the top. So anyways, Corey, thank you for being here. Before we get into the details of oil and gas, the most important question is, do you believe that we landed on the moon? Yes or no?
Not in 1969.
All right, I love it. So you play drums in a band, and I think you play other instruments, but just to confirm, when you told your parents that you wanted to be a drummer, did they start pushing you towards oil and gas pretty quickly, or did that happen later?
No, my dad's actually a musician, so they didn't really have much to say about that. But yeah, I think my dad said it best was you could either be an electrician or a musician, and one of them's going to pay your bills. One of them isn't.
Yeah. What's your dad play? I'm curious.
He plays guitar and drums and bass.
Okay, gotcha. All right, and you as well as kind of the same instruments,
Yeah.
or more than that?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, are you singing all that? Or no.
I yell a lot. That's about it.
All right, that's okay. There's a place for everyone's voice. I think that matters. I used to play, so I played piano for way too long, like 15 years or whatever. I was going to go to college for music, and then I decided to just completely drop it. I haven't touched a piano in about 15 years now. It's terrible, but I missed the music part of it, and had a lot of fun. Actually, in one of our last episodes, I took an old recording that I had. We used to put these floppy disks into the and do all these MIDI recordings.
Oh yeah.
And anyways, I learned how to use all this fun stuff when I was like 15 years old. Put it into an AI tool, and it rewrote the song and like put instrumentals. It was so cool. So anyways, I'm kind of a music head. Yeah, it's good stuff. But excited to talk. So you are out there on the Cushing Tank Farms, and I'm really curious. Like living in Cushing, there's we've had this conversation before, you and I, but there's really not a ton to do out there besides like oil and gas. Like that is what the town is all about. But
Yeah.
was there something that got you into oil and gas? Tell us a little bit about what you do out there every day.
I'm an electrician. I went to college to become an electrician. My dad actually worked for what was the Amoco pipelines here in the tank farms, which sold to BP, which sold to Magellan, which sold to One Oak. These companies change names quite frequently. And so these careers in these tank farms are kind of I guess you would call it the major leagues of the oil and gas jobs around here. And so all growing up, it's just all I knew was my dad worked in these tank farms, and everybody I knew worked in these tank farms, and all his friends worked in these tank farms. So it just kind of became one of those things where that's what I wanted to do. Since I didn't make it being a rock star, I figured I better do something else.
Yeah, totally. And
You would be
just to give people,
you would be hard pressed to find someone in Cushing whose family member doesn't work out here.
yeah, I believe it. I mean, just to give people a sense of the size. I mean, like how long end to end if you had to drive it? I mean, I want to say it's like it's like a 10-minute drive almost to go all the way from one end to the other.
Yeah, it would be about 6 square miles
Yeah,
of
it's pretty incredible.
tanks. And some of these tanks, like you witnessed, are about 70 feet tall and about 100 yards in diameter. And they can hold up to about 750,000 barrels of oil.
Yep. Yep. So, one of my favorite stories to tell people is we get out there, and, and you tell me something that I didn't know. And I feel, I was like, it blew my mind, but it's that the WTI is actually calculated based on what goes through Cushing. So,
That's correct.
I mean, That to me, I mean, that's a number that we look at in the industry every day almost. I mean, companies, I don't want to say they live and die by it, but they do, because the reality is, the price of oil makes a huge difference on the economics of what's going on. And whether it increases activity in the long run or the short run, well, that doesn't really matter. It's a metric that we're kind of checking out on a regular basis. But how are they doing that? Like, I'm not saying how do they do the calculation, but do you have any sense of, like, is it the amount of throughput? I mean, are you guys constantly getting, more oil, less oil? Like, are you guys seeing that fluctuation in supply?
We do see a fluctuation in supply at the terminal here. We know mostly what everybody else knows due to the stock traders have drones that fly and they look at all the tanks. And in the early mornings or late evenings, they can tell by the temperature differential and the way the sun shines on these big tanks, how much oil is in each tank. They use FLIR cameras on their drones and helicopters to see which pumps are running due to the heat signatures. They measure the power lines. They've developed some kind of proprietary machine that they can hold up to the power lines and see who's drawing what power. And they report all that back to the stock exchange and the day traders. And it's information that anybody could probably look up. But 20 miles south of here, the Bakken oil fields from North Dakota, that's where the oil comes into Cushing. And it's unloaded on rail cars, and they have cameras set up on people's private property, and they count the number of rail cars that come in every day, and they know how much each rail car has in it. And so they can say there's X amount of Bakken barrels now heading for the Cushing terminal storage facilities, and they report all that up to the traders.
Yeah. That's amazing. So these guys, I'm guessing, I mean, they're probably sitting all over the country. Maybe it's, maybe they're New
Oh,
York,
sure.
Wall Street kind of thing, but they're still taking physical data basically. It's not like, okay, we're going to measure it at this one point. They're trying to get as far ahead of it as they can, even just counting the rail cars as it comes in. Okay. And then from there, so it goes from rail car, they're putting into the tanks, and effectively at that point, I mean, does an electrician do? I mean, it sounds like everything is obviously electric these days, but like, what's the things that you're looking at in your role?
We have countless, pressure transmitters, temperature transmitters, metering devices. We have all the valves are all electrically actuated. So if you want to take oil from tank A into this pump, there's valves that open and close. It's all driven via satellite communications. And so we're out here to make sure that when something needs to function, it does.
Okay. Are there moments in your job where you kind of get that red alert, like, "Hey, this is not working. We need you guys out here immediately," or is this a 9 to 5 kind of job?
No, I'm on call 24/7. And
Okay,
when the
I
and
figured
when
as
the
much.
phone yeah, when the phone rings, you've got to go.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have much of a
It's
response window.
it's good to be close by, I guess. And like, driving through, it was fun because we were this was a couple months ago. I think it was back in February, March. But anyways, it was right after Nape, and we stayed in Oklahoma City, and then we went out to Tulsa, and we came down to you guys in Cushing. And we just drove for, like, it felt like a very long time. And then you get to Cushing, and it's just this huge pipeline. It says, well, welcome to Cushing on it. And then you start driving through the town, and it's these massive pump jacks in the middle. It's cool. And then you get to kind of your downtown area, but again, it is all oil and gas, and then you got the tank farms, and then you try to figure, okay, getting out of here, we're gonna get back on the freeway and kind of head back up. And man, I wish I could probably spend like a whole day out there, just like to take it all in, and you feel the scale of the American energy industry when you're standing there. It's pretty cool. So one thing, it kind of go back to the rail cars, and I don't know how much of this, again, I'm kind of doing some research on my side, and I don't know where it syncs up with what you do, but we hear about custody transfer. So basically, you got oil coming in, it changes ownership, and then you might have sweet crude come in from one, and then that's going to change to something else, and there might be some, like, how do you avoid the mixing, and how does that side work? I'm not entirely clear on what I was trying to learn there.
Well, it goes to the least custody transfer systems whenever the oil comes in, and it generates a ticket. It measures each barrel of oil that comes through, and it'll generate a ticket that we call it. And then we enter that into the accounting system. And then when it gets shipped to somewhere else, somebody say buys 100,000 barrels of oil from Plains to ship to a refinery. It goes through output meters at the Plains facility to the incoming meters of whichever facility is going to pump it to the refinery. And then we count that many barrels. And then we ship it to that and we count that many barrels. So each barrel of oil is accounted for from the time it leaves the gathering facility until it actually reaches the ultimate refinery or offshore loading rack somewhere. So each barrel of oil is accounted for every time it changes hands.
Which makes sense. Obviously, there's that. I mean, it's a commodity that needs to be measured and controlled, right? But
Mhm.
are there you're getting, like you mentioned, you're getting stuff in from the Bakken, you're getting stuff in from East Texas, for example. Are refineries saying, "Hey, we are they picking and choosing where they get the oil from then too?" And
Yes.
I mean, is that part of this?
Different grades of crude are better for different blends of gasoline. Say for summer blend, they might want the blend from West Texas basin. They may want a blend from North Dakota, or say they're going to do a run of some diesel, whatever. Then they'll buy a different grade of crude depending on what the refinery needs to make whatever product that they're looking to make for that particular time.
Gotcha. And then we get into all the jet fuel and stuff like that. So, comparing, we had a conversation, I think one of the episodes that came out just before yours with Mike Umbro, and we're talking about, the California refineries, right? And, taking that, and one of our refineries now produces 60% of the jet fuel for our state. And they're converting into, I think they're converting into a green energy sort of hybrid, which was an interesting thing to kind of think through. But so all those different refineries could be set up differently, and you guys are helping move that product through. So let's see, another thing. So safety, right? You're out there, you've got all this oil. I mean, how long are your safety meetings? And are they every day?
They it just about they can go on for an hour at least. And I mean, safety is our number one job. There's nothing we don't do that's not documented, that we don't do paperwork before we even walk outside. We have just a litany of things that we have to do, and permits, and of course all our protective equipment and our fireproof clothes and all that good stuff. But yeah, safety is paramount. I mean, you're talking a lot of high pressure around all these pumping facilities that is moving this oil. You've got extreme amounts of pressure, and leaks can happen. Anything could happen. I mean, like I said, we work around electricity. We have high voltage, medium voltage, low voltage. We have H2S, which is always a hazard, So we've got all our air monitors and everything else that you probably seen firemen and stuff wear. We have the same thing that we have to wear when we're outside. But yeah, safety is our fundamental number one goal.
Yeah, every day. Yeah. And I imagine it gets a little bit hot. Well, not a little bit hot. It gets hot out there in the summertime, and
Very.
you're in the PPE and everything, and it's got to be pretty taxing, in terms of staying hydrated and all the other fun stuff that comes along with that too. That most of us don't think about. I don't. I was telling Carly. So I work with Carly, and I think I've joked with her, like, I don't drink water unless it has coffee in it. I'm
Exactly.
imagining you probably walk a little bit of a different line.
No, it's mostly coffee for me too.
Okay, all right.
We just get acclimated to it here.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So let's see. One term that I came across. This was when I started learning about oil and gas. It's probably like 4 or 5 years ago. But someone told me use the term pigging, and I was like, "What the heck is that?" Like, like, it's the funniest. It's, if you think about it, it's a really weird term to use for what. But then when you see it in action, it kind of makes sense, right? All right, are you guys doing that out, because it's all
Yes,
pipelines, right? So are you involved in that at all, where you got to
I
maybe
am.
shut something off? Okay. Can you maybe walk us through that? I'm curious to hear the more like hands-on details of what that entails.
We have what we call a scraper trap, because the true term for the pig is a scraper.
Okay.
And we have a trap that we line up and we drain it out and we open it and we insert the tool, and then we close the trap and fill it back full of oil, and then it gets sent on its way. There's not a whole lot to it other than there's different types of pigs. There's brush pigs, scraper pigs, batching pigs.
Okay.
But the reason for it is to clean the interior of the pipe,
Okay.
because
How often does that need to happen?
it varies depending on the amount of stuff that comes out of the receiving end, the BS and W, which is the bottom sediment and water. DOT mandates certain regulations depending on your pipeline, the age, all that stuff. I don't want to get into too many details about our local operations, but
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
we do it. We
the
do it quite
DOT
quite
governs that
frequently.
though.
Do what?
Okay, and the DOT governs that. That's the
DOT
Department
governs
of Transportation.
everything.
Okay,
He governs everything that we do in these tank farms
okay, and is that
because
because
we're
there's interstate
transporting
transit or
oil.
things like that?
Yep, we're transporting oil across state lines,
Gotcha.
and so I'm essentially a DOT employee, really.
Really? Okay. That's an interesting way to think about it. Because I usually think trucking, right? And that's sort of, but okay, that would make sense now that I'm kind of zooming out a little bit. So there's a lot of government involvement then. And I'm sure you guys have OSHA as well and all the other
Absolutely.
entities out there too. Yeah.
Pretty much
Gotcha.
any government agency with an abbreviation has say so over us.
Fair enough. Yeah. Most of the stuff we do has been like oilfield services, upstream related. And I think you might be, well, we haven't talked to anyone about pipeline specifically, so this is pretty cool. A couple producers, but very cool. Let's talk about these tanks because that's what you see. That's the thing that my son was most interested in me showing him photos of. I was under the impression that these tanks, the walls of them were like at least a foot thick of steel. I think you shared that they're nowhere near that. But how do those tanks work? And they have the floating roofs and all this other stuff because you can't smell the oil when you're out there. There's all kinds of cool things with those things. So maybe walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, the majority of all modern tanks are what we call an external floating roof tank, which means it's just a cylinder of steel, and the roof is basically like a pontoon boat, and it actually rests on pontoons, and it floats up and down with the oil of the level. As you pump oil in, the roof floats on top of the surface of the oil, and it creates a vapor barrier. That way there's no oxygen can get in for fires, and it's sealed around the outside edge with a big Teflon seal. And that's why all the vapors, you don't smell anything out here, even when the wind is blowing. And if you do smell something, that means somebody around here probably had a leak of some kind.
Right. It needs to get fixed. Yeah. Okay. And again, they're not. It's like maybe 4 inches of steel, and they kind of taper up, right? As far as
I would
thickness,
say
or are they steel? I don't know.
it's probably 3/4 of an inch thick at the bottom and a quarter of an inch on the
Okay.
very top ring. It doesn't have to be very thick because oil weighs less than water to begin with. It only weighs 6 pounds a
Right.
gallon versus 8 pounds for water. And being that it is a cylinder and it's welded steel, cylinders very strong. So it doesn't really have to be that thick of steel, honestly.
Yeah.
And the
I
boards are
remember.
made of fiberglass.
Okay. Yeah, and I remember weighing. So my dad, we used to race cars back in the day, and we would calculate, depending on how fast he was going to be going, and then how long the track was, and how much time he was going to be before he could pit. You would, calculate how much gas you should put in. You never have a full tank because it's just too heavy. But learning about how all that stuff weighed was fun. But cleaning these tanks out. So at some point, do they have to clean the tanks too? And I
Yes.
mean, is it just a giant pressure washer? How does that like? What's that process look like? It's got to be insane.
There's a DOT regulation that every 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember, you have to go in and clean the tanks and inspect them internally for corrosion, damage, and all that stuff. And basically, they bring in a hot oiling machine. It's just like a giant water heater, basically, that's powered by propane. And they circulate the oil in the tank and they get it all good and hot. So the paraffins and all the sediment at the bottom, all of it gets all stirred up good. And these tanks also have mixers on them, which work like the inside of a blender, and it keeps that oil churned up to try to keep the sediment at minimum. But they circulate all that oil and they drain the tank, and the roof lands. It's got legs on the bottom of it, and they land the roof. And then they open the door on the side of it. There's a big sheet of steel that's bolted on. That's the door. And they go in with big ass squeegees and start dragging all that junk and nasty stuff out of there. It's pretty well manual
That's
labor.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
until they get it safe enough you could bring a machine in. Once all the vapors are out and all the flammable stuff's pretty well gone, then they can bring machinery in. But for the most part, it's pretty well hand done. And the guys that do that are a special breed because they're in full SCBAs like firemen are wearing, supplied air systems. They're in the full Tyvek gear with heavy tools, sludging around in nasty stuff. And inside of those tanks can probably get 140 degrees in the summertime. So, I mean, the guys that clean those tanks there's some phenomenal humans.
No kidding. That is unbelievable. I would not. I mean, I know it's dangerous because of what they're doing, but you wouldn't have thought about it from that level of dedication, right? I mean, that's crazy. And the number of tanks at the farm, uh, I'm sure it's and even at 7 years, it's not like you're doing them all every 7 years. Like it's probably on a pretty good rotation, so they're out there. I'd imagine
Yeah.
relatively consistently getting it done.
Yeah, there's always at least you can drive around here and see 2 or 3 of them being cleaned at any given time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That I would love to see that in real life.
Yeah.
Like all this stuff. I was texting a friend of mine, and he's like, "You should do like the dirty jobs of oil and gas," and nobody would insure us to do that. Like go out and like learn how to do it because you got to know what you're doing. You can't just go out and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this knob and see what happens." Like it doesn't work that way.
No.
But I'm just continually yeah, I'm just so amazed by the things that happen out there. So let's see here. It seems like the safety culture is predominant out there in Cushing, and the tank farms aren't the only oil and gas thing going on out there. I know there's other, there's people that have there's oil fields, like there's oil all around in Oklahoma. But besides the safety culture side, how would you like describe? Because it's not just one company; it's many companies. How does that kind of how does that work with everyone working out there? Like, what's the culture like? I'm curious.
We all pretty much have the same regulations that we follow as far as safety goes. I mean, the OSHA standards and the OSHA minimums that we all have to follow. And then each company, of course, has their own on top of that. And so, I mean, everyone around here, if you have to go into another person's facility, generally you have an orientation where they will tell you their specific safety stuff that they're really into, and you have to usually watch a little video, maybe take a little test, and before they'll let you even pass their office. And my company's the same way. I mean, you can't just because you work across the street, you can't just come in my gate and go look at something.
Yeah.
But we all
Are
get
there
along.
people that
We
are
all get along. I mean, everybody at every company,
yeah.
everyone gets along well. I mean, we a lot of us know a lot of each other just because it is a small community. And so everyone gets along well. And, you know, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to need a part and be like, I wonder if they have one over at such and such company. And, to go over there and just knock on the door and be like, hey, I need a part. And they'll be like, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, there's no rivalry of anything like that.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I think getting around to, and you answered it there was, yes, it's these are all competitors in the market, so to speak, but at the end of the day, it's guys, gals, same goal, trying to get the same thing done, and just want to
Mhm.
do a good job doing it.
Yep.
That's awesome. Are there people that are turned off by the safety culture? Like, I don't know. Are there people that have gotten 30 days into it, and they're like, man, I'm not screw this. I'm not wearing, all that gear. Like I can't do this anymore. Or is it okay? So that happens. I would imagine there's a little bit of that revolt that might occur if you
You
get
know,
into it.
it's especially if you come from a lax safety culture, like a lot of the local oil producers, they don't know what safety is. Frankly, they scare me. And if, one of those people wanted to come into here and say, go to work here, and all of a sudden they were like, what do you mean I have to wear a hard hat? I have to have this, I have to have that, and I have to fill out 4 pieces of paper just to walk outside the door. Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I got you. I'm not saying I would fall into that, but like I worked for, I went from working for a family company to them, it became a corporate company, and they had all these new rules, and none of them were far fetched, but you could just feel that there was a shift, right? And it was like
Mhm.
you either get on board and you follow the shift, or
Right.
go do something else. So in terms of education, you went to school to become an electrician. Like, what kind of is this require if you want to work out there? Are there jobs where you just have a high school degree, or do
Yes.
you need to go to college and figure that out?
No, there's lots of these jobs that are you just need a high school diploma. The more skilled it is, most of these companies, if you started as an entry level position, they train you. I mean, they have their own little miniature colleges that they send their employees to. And, you start as a entry level, I'll just call you a hand, excuse me, and say you want it to be a technician like I am. They will train you to become a technician, and they train you on all the equipment that you would be working with. I mean, they've got their own special schools. My company has one in Chicagoland area, and all the new hires, everybody goes to this training center. And so, I mean, you could literally start out with a high school diploma right out of high school if you can get hired and work your way up. There's no limitations. And that's one of the great things about these jobs around here like this. It's still blue collar.
Yeah, I could I could see where, I mean, there's opportunity in the whole oil field. Like it's its own economy, but you can get into it at any level, and that's, I think, always been really cool to see. And just the ability to build a life around that is amazing. So last couple of questions, and I'm gonna let you go. I know it's Friday as we record this, and we got other things to jump to, but on April 20th, 2020, WTI went negative. Can you share
That
a
was
little bit
chaos.
about what it was like out there in Cushing? I don't want to make you relive the trauma of that day, but I mean, it's like everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, Cushing's full." I mean, what are you gonna do, right?
You
What was it
couldn't
like?
in the tri-state area the day that happened, every frac tank or tanker truck that was not being currently used was hauled in here to Cushing. They were hauling tankage, frac tanks in 24 hours a day. It was just a stream of frac tanks coming in here, and they were trying to store as much oil as they possibly could while it was what $40 negative a barrel, whatever it was.
Yeah,
It didn't affect me
yeah.
any at all. I just thought it was the amount of storage that was trying to be. Every tank here was full, about to run over. I mean, and Cushing can hold roughly, our latest estimates are about 100 million barrels in the Cushing terminal area that we call all the tank farms together the terminal. It's about 100 million barrels, and plus all the tankage they were hauling in here. And I mean, there were tanker trucks just lined up down the county roads because there wasn't anywhere else to park them. And it was
Crazy.
pretty wild for a couple weeks.
Oh my gosh. I So the rest of the world is like, like wondering what the heck's going on, taking pictures of their TV screen. You're out there in Cushing. You're like, man, I gotta go to work. Gotta make sure all this fits, and that's incredible. I wouldn't have thought that. Are there other tank farms in the country? I'm assuming there has to be, but any that come
Yeah,
nearly as size wise to Cushing, or no?
Cushing's the largest.
Okay, all right, okay, gotcha. Well, let's keep it that way. I like it. It's
I hope
fun
so.
to, yeah, heck yeah, absolutely. All right. So if you could like uninvent something or take something away from these tank farms or make it simpler, like is there anything you would change? Like, hey, Corey's in charge today. We're gonna change one thing. Is there anything you would do different?
No, I think over the last 125, 130 years that they've been getting oil out of the ground here, it's a well-oiled machine. It
Yeah,
really
it
honestly
sounds
is.
like it.
The way it functions, I don't think it could get much simpler as far as getting a commodity from point A to point B. I don't know that there'd be a simpler way because you would be saving money if you could simplify. And so all these companies over the years, they have found the simplest, most safest, utmost, quickest way to get oil out of the ground to a port or a refinery.
Yeah,
I wish there was
that makes
something I could
sense. I
change to
mean,
make my job easier, but there's not.
yeah, that's all right. No, that's a great thing though. I mean, I think a lot of people look around at their job and they're like, man, I would change everything, from top to bottom. And it's like, well, some things just work well and they should. Are there any, fun or wild stories you can share without getting in trouble? Probably not, but I have to ask.
No, due to our safety culture and stuff like that, we don't really have any wild stories or crazy mishaps other than just several guys working together cutting up with each other. But as far as anything
Gotcha.
absolute crazy, I mean, we've had a leak here or there, which is not uncommon.
That's normal.
But as far as anything crazy, no, honestly, in my 20 some years of being here, I can honestly say there has not been anything crazy. And that's just due, like you said a while ago, to our safety culture and the way that these companies have been built over the years to reliably feed energy. That there's not a lot of crazy stuff happens.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I'm excited. I will be coming out to Cushing again here in the next couple of months. I love Oklahoma. I've told everyone, they're like, what's your favorite place to go visit? And I'm like, for work, and it's Oklahoma. I love it out there. And anyways, thank you for coming on
Thanks
and
for having me.
just for kind of giving us some insight into Cushing. And I think there's probably more, like the amount of research that you could do on this topic to like ask and get into more detail. It's incredible. I think we've only scratched the surface. So, anyways, thank you guys for listening. Corey, thank you for coming on. Say hello to your lovely wife, Carly, and thank her for coordinating this with us.
I will.
And for everyone else, we'll see you again. Yeah, we'll see you again next week.